Present day. Present time.
Destiny 2 is not a bad game. In fact, the campaign mode, the story that everyone needs to complete before unlocking the quote-unquote real game, is pretty decent. I enjoyed the missions, I enjoyed leveling up and finding loot that kept progressing my power. I enjoyed the constant sense of progression, the forward momentum of the game. But then I got to the endgame content. Games like Destiny, loot-based games, Diablo 3, Borderlands, these games live or die by their endgame content. And Destiny 2's endgame is a letdown. It's not even all that ambitious, contrary to Bungie's hype machine for both the original game and the sequel. The endgame is a grind, and it's the worst kind of grind, a repetitive and unfulfilling set of events, upon completion of which you simply say, well, I did that. Now I'll wait until the weekly reset and do it all over again. For reasons. But before I get to that, let me talk about the parts I did enjoy, the campaign before the quote-unquote real game begins, which will allow me to talk about what the game gets right. The story is, well, nothing special. It's cliché, it's poorly written, characters are not even cardboard cutouts, and the cinematic cutscenes are, although beautifully rendered, very dull and not in the least bit cinematic. Puns. Puns are fun. But at least there is a sense of forward momentum, a motivation to your character's actions that's far more substantive than just must get level 20, must get power 280, must nightfall, must raid. And there are some impressive set pieces. One thing that I really admire about the set pieces, actually, is how few there are. There's the initial attack on the tower at the very beginning of the game. There's a ridiculous slog immediately after you've been beaten up and left for dead. Really the only set piece that does not work on any level. And then there are the final two missions. Because of the relative scarcity of these set pieces, when you get to one, it feels much more significant, much grander. And I applaud Bungie for the restraint it showed in this area. The graphics are beautiful. This is a gorgeously realized world. I'd be happier if it looked a bit more distinct from the original Destiny, but hey, I barely played the original, so it was kinda new to me. And the frame rate on the PS4 Pro is rock solid. I have yet to experience any kind of dip or shudder, anything, which, given the current state of console gaming, is a remarkable feat unto itself. The sound design is great, very visceral. The voice acting is okay, but when the script is this bad, well, the actors did the best they could with the material. The music is awesome in a way that's not very memorable, but it is really good. It's just a very well done background soundtrack. As for the gameplay, it's pretty good. Repetitive, sure, but that's what a shooter is. The gunplay has a satisfyingly heavy feel to it, and the melee attacks are so much fun. I ran through whole areas just face-palming enemies, and it was glorious. The variety of guns does allow a certain amount of customization based on your preferred playstyle. I like auto rifles and submachine guns for that very fast, from-the-hip, spray-and-pray action, but my brother prefers sidearms and hand cannons for that much more precise, precision kill thing. And the game does allow for these variations, up to a certain point. Unfortunately, the power system does break it. Your overall power level, which affects the power of loot drops, is figured based on the highest power level gear you are carrying. But your actual power level is figured based on what you've got equipped, which means I had to ditch my preferred auto rifle in order to keep my power level up for much of the game, and use weapons I really did not like until the very end of the story, when I finally got a replacement auto rifle at a usable power level. Now, I understand why Bungie went this route, and I know you can infuse weapons to make them stronger, but the variety of weapon options combined with the nature of loot drops means that you are frequently not getting weapons you want, and are forced to play with weapons you don't like in order to maintain a decent power level. This wasn't a major problem for me because for most of the game I was significantly above the recommended power level for most of the missions, but then I got to the endgame content. One last thing about the campaign though, the final boss is stupidly easy. Unbelievably easy. I went in thinking, Dark Souls has prepared me. I am prepared to die. I am a guardian and I am going to get my ass handed to me. And then I beat this guy on my first go and realized that at no point in my solo fight with him did my health drop into the red. That felt kinda crummy. Not gonna lie, that was hella disappointing. But then began the quote-unquote real game, the end game content. Now, every Destiny player knows that the end game is a grind with 3 real milestones to aim for. Get to power level 265, get to level 280, and then work towards 300. Now, when I finished the game, I was right around power level 200, maybe a little bit higher. I thought, okay, this won't be too difficult. Aim for 265. The problem, however, is that the loot drops weren't pushing my power up quite the way they were before. A majority of the rare drops were either at my power level or slightly below. I thought, okay, I have to work a little bit harder. No problem. So I popped a fire team medallion, fought in the Crucible, played some public events, even tried a few strikes, and my power did start to increase. Slowly. Very slowly. And mostly due to the legendaries I found in the process. Eventually though, 265. 265, however, is the soft cap for rare loot, which means you're not getting rare loot that pushes your power up any higher. You have to rely on legendaries and exotics. Okay. Eventually I hit 270, which is the soft cap for legendary engrams, which is the standard reward for the factions. At this point, my power progression dropped to trench warfare speeds, by which I mean I was measuring progress towards the next power level in inches. At least I finally got an auto rifle that was near my power level. Of course, when I equipped it, my power level actually dropped. The only way at this point to keep powering up is to obtain powerful gear, which mostly increases your power level, except when it doesn't. Now, I get Bungie not wanting players to automatically get to 300. I know they wanted to make players work for it. I really get that. And I would not mind the grind if I felt I was still making progress. The problem is, I wasn't. Yes, you can do any of the side quests, the adventures, patrols, strikes, raids, anything that you want. But you're only making progress towards 300 if you do the very select activities that the game tells you you must do in order to progress. That means you have to fight in 10 to 12 Crucible matches each week, you have to complete the weekly Nightfall, you have to join a clan and get clan XP, which admittedly is pretty easy to do, and you have to do the raid. And here's the rub. None of those activities are much fun. Personally, I hate team deathmatch in the Crucible, and the people I end up playing with always take the match way too seriously. The Nightfall is way more stress-inducing than it is enjoyable, mostly due to the time limit and, again, people taking it way too seriously. And the raid, I can't actually play because I don't have 5 other people to play it with. Which leaves the public events, of which there are 8. 8. And once you know how to finish them, they are cakewalks. Cakewalks that you will be repeating endlessly. Cakewalks that won't reward you with usable loot until you max out your clan XP for the week. Or you can do the patrols. You can kill enemies, survey an area, which means You can stand in one place for a minute, or you can collect things from enemies. Kill, survey, collect. Repeat, repeat, repeat. You can do the adventure missions, which are just variations on the same go here and kill stuff theme, even though they will only give you rare loot or upgrade points that you don't need. Notice a pattern here? Repeat, repeat, repeat. And lest we forget, no matter what activity you're doing, you're essentially doing the same thing. Killing the same enemies using the same weapons. Nothing changes, except for, yes, the difficulty in the Nightfall and the raid. And I could forgive all of that if I felt that I was becoming genuinely more powerful. But I never felt that. At no point did I feel that I could just mow through basic enemies, not in a way that was fundamentally different from the way I did at the start of the game. And let's not forget that you're often doing all of this with weapons you don't want to be using, because the weapon you do want to be using is often underpowered relative to the power level you want to maintain. Look, is Destiny 2's Endgame really that bad? No, it's not exactly bad. It doesn't really suck. It's fine for what it is. But what it is highly repetitive, without any real sense of progression for much of it. When you hit that soft cap and realize you can only do certain activities to progress, and then realize that those activities are limited in how many times you can do them each week, the endgame becomes a tedious, unfulfilling grind. One last issue, and admittedly it is a minor issue, all things considered, but it does break the story and makes little sense mechanically speaking. Why are there social spaces in this game? You're the last guardian, savior of the system, surrounded by 20 or so other last guardians who just did the same things you just did. Contextually, makes no sense. From a gameplay perspective, the social spaces are far too handicapped. There is really no interaction with other players, except to provide a space to invite players to your fire team. A process which is, let's face it, way clunkier than it should be. Why can't we have some kind of chat system in these spaces? Why is there no trading system? Why aren't there simplistic clan invitations? What you can do with other players involves going through a tedious menu system. And what you can't do would allow for the sense of community that Bungie loves to say Destiny already has, but it doesn't. Look, during the first week, I played a lot of Destiny 2. But the second week, I played less. This past week, I've barely touched it. It's not an ambitious game. It is not jam-packed with content that you want to play. Yes, I enjoyed the campaign. I enjoyed everything prior to the quote-unquote real game. But then I got to the real game, and I found that it does not have the same loot-based depth of something like Diablo 3 or even Borderlands. The real game is just repetitive mediocrity. You may now commence hating on me.
Pomegranate.